Well, hello and welcome to For Fox's Sake. And my name is Pete Selby. Alongside me is Rob Hayes, and we're talking all things breaking news. Leicester are on the verge, it seems, of appointing a new manager, and the manager is Gary Rowett, the defender from the turn of the century, if you go back that far. Also, recently sacked by Oxford after keeping them up last season, and he's got a lot of championship clubs behind him, like Millwall, Birmingham, and also Stoke as well, interestingly enough, who will be taking on Saturday. So that could be an interesting first game for him. Now, this news, Rob, is breaking right now. It's from John Percy in the Telegraph. Nothing's been confirmed by the football club, but Percy is the 100% guy. If he says something, it normally is the case that it's going to happen. So we're talking all things Gary Rowett. Now, first of all, get in contact. This is all breaking news. We want to know your opinion out there. Okay, if you're watching, if you're listening right now, tell us, what do you think? Now, apparently, the deal is going to be a temporary deal until the end of the season. And then obviously, depending if we're in the championship, if it does well, who knows? But obviously, if we go down, again, who knows? So lots to talk about. So get in contact if you're watching on X, on Twitter, or if you're watching on Facebook, or even on YouTube. On YouTube as well, you can turn your screen vertically and you can see us and basically comment away. First one straight in. Before I even talk to Rob, wait 1 second, because we've got one comment. The right appointment at the right time, says Steve-O. Well, we will discuss that. And that's my question to you, Rob, okay? Andy Moore is going to do a deep dive on Gary Rowett. It will be on for Fox8.news very soon. So head over to for Fox8.news and subscribe for that pint a month. It's £5 a month for all the content on there. And again, we'll go into that as we go through the show. But Rob, what was your initial reaction to the news about Gary Rowett? On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy were you? Or was it just a realistic, yeah, actually, that's the sort of guy we're going to get at this stage?
That's what it's got to be, hasn't it? We've got to be realists at this point. I think when Cifuentes first got sacked, it was a little bit of relief, really, for most people who thought he'd run his race. And then we thought, right, Andy King will get us a bounce. And you could argue that he has, performance-wise, in terms of how much more enjoyable in parts Leicester are to watch and how much more effective they seem to be in parts of the game. I mean, the players aren't doing him any favours. But then maybe part of the reason why we've waited so long is so that the ownership could see if Andy King could do it till the end of the season. I think at this point, there are so many things up in the air at the football club that a deal until the end of the season makes sense. Am I absolutely excited by Gary Rowett? No, I am not. But do I look at it and think, yeah, if there's anybody knocking about at the moment who could come in, be no nonsense, tighten things up defensively, and just about keep us in the division, and then we reassess in the summer, then it makes total sense.
Yeah, we've got Tony Smith there. He's saying uninspiring appointment. Did it really take over 3 weeks to get Gary Rowett? And a 1 out of 10. And that's the decision as well. That's from the initial reaction to people posting on social media and instantly sending a few messages through on WhatsApp, etc. That was the initial reaction. Why is it taking 3 weeks for a guy who quite openly said that he would come to Leicester? And we know, of course, he would have done 3 weeks ago. Now, maybe there's other targets that's more than likely have fallen by the wayside. Were they waiting for Andy King to maybe pick up more points than he has, i.e. some? It's a decision that's taken a lot of time. And ultimately, I think when a decision like a new manager takes time, you're expecting maybe something out of the ordinary. And this seems to be very much a case of the ordinary. But is it just what we can expect at this current time? We can't, beggars can't be choosers. We've used that word on For Fox's Sake an awful lot over the last few weeks. What about that time it's taken, Rob? That it's taken for the club. It's been one of the longest time that the King Power in charge of Leicester have taken to appoint a manager.
Yeah, 3 weeks is a long time. And to throw the full cliche at it, it's a long time in football because we've played quite a few games since then. And as you said, not picked up any points or any decent results, really. It would be interesting to know if from the minute they sacked Cifuentes, or even in the weeks before when Cifuentes being sacked was coming into their thought processes and in the board meetings, whether they were genuinely thinking, right, who replaces him, or whether it was a case of if Andy King gets 2 or 3 wins in his first 5 or 6 games, do we leave it with him? So that might have been the first thought. The second thought, probably in terms of Rowett, was if we sack Cifuentes and get Rowett in, who's only recently himself been sacked by a club that are also down at the wrong end of the championship table, is that going to help us in terms of our opinion amongst the fans at the moment? The answer would have been absolutely not. If it's sacked Cifuentes and brought Rowett in the next day, the fans would have been a bit like, oh, not really particularly inspired by that. So there's the other alternative that maybe they were trying for more high profile candidates. But ultimately, if you're a manager, if you're most kind of managers who were being talked about, and I'm glad it's not Russell Martin, but Russell Martin, Steven Gerrard's name was mentioned, everybody's name has been mentioned. Nobody was going to come to this football club and take it till the end of the season. So it might have been those were the negotiations that were taking place. But Rowett is the kind of manager who can come in, do the job till the end of the season. And like you said, if we stay in the championship, he's got some good results. He then sits down and talks about a longer term plan and they think he's the right man. Great. If we get relegated to League One, he's probably still the right man.
Absolutely. And the comments are flooding through. More seasons gaffer than King. Yes, absolutely. And the interesting thing would be what happens with Andy King. More than likely, I would imagine he would probably remain as part of the coaching setup. That's all to come through, of course, with the actual appointment of Rowett as well. We've also got Thomas once again saying it reflects where we are. Hopefully, the lack of candidates made top realise the reality of where we are. Eddie, who's watching on Facebook, Eddie says it's down to the players to get the results. We need to save us from relegation. Just hope that Gary can help, which is kind of where I'm looking at as well. It's a case of he's bringing in another Leicester guy. I know it's not exactly the Leicester hero of yesteryear. It's not Andy King. It's not a career that everyone's going to look back on and go, do you remember Gary Rowett? The only positive, it stopped a club legend becoming a 007. We shall see. We shall see. Because, and keep your comments coming through, whether you're watching on Facebook, on YouTube, maybe vertically as well now on YouTube, or on X, or if you're listening back to this, remember, do subscribe to the podcast, and you can subscribe via Apple Podcasts or via Spotify or via SoundCloud. So if you want to listen back to the audio version of this and the preview and the women's football show, all that we operate here at For Fox's Sake. And of course, with the podcast has been going for about 12 years now, 12, 13 years, but we're part of forfoxsake.news. Head to forfoxsake.news, and for £5 per month, you get a plethora of information. You get loads and loads of articles, loads of features, in-depth dive. There's going to be all sorts from Andy Moore regarding this, and it costs just £5 a month, the price of a pint. And for that, of course, it keeps the podcast absolutely free. So head to forfoxsake.news. Keep those comments coming through. And I think this is an important one as well. Is this confirmed? Well, the answer is no, it's not confirmed. But we're trusting John Percy of the Telegraph, who is, in my opinion, he's not just the number one. He's by far and away clear of the rest. He is the Matt Weston of Leicester journalists out there covering Leicester City Football Club. If you've been watching the Winter Olympics, you'll get that. So he's by far and away the best. And this looks like it will be confirmed in the next 48 hours that Gary Rowett will be the interim manager. He'll be the manager now until the end of the season. And then we'll discuss what happens. Now, we're going to have a podcast tomorrow discussing Leicester at the current time. Okay. We've got some very important podcasts coming tomorrow as well, because we've got the women's football show. We've also later in the week discussing possible protests as well with protest organisers. Looking forward to that. And then we've got the preview as well. So make sure you do subscribe to the podcast, because we've got probably 5 coming through this week, but we want to be talking about Gary Rowett. Now, when you look back on his history, Rob, if you were looking for a manager to come in at this stage for what we need, for what Leicester needs, if you're going to bring someone in who is going to be there from now until the end of the season, and possibly that's it, do you think that Gary Rowett fits those aspects of a manager that we need. Someone to keep it tight at the back because, it's a sieve, isn't it? Our defence, it's ridiculous. It's a broken sieve. It's a sieve that's been cut in half. But do you think he has those qualities as a manager, or is it just a case of he's actually probably the best person for the job who's out there right now?
I think it is a bit of both, but I do agree that he is the right kind of bloke to bring in. I think it is, if it does go through, I think it is a massive indication that Top and John Rudkin are actually finally realizing that whatever sort of dreams they had of style of football at this football club, and dreams they may keep in their minds but wait until the summer to try to make come true again, they've actually become realists in this. They've been sharply awoken by the points deduction, by us losing in the FA Cup at the weekend and then sliding into the relegation zone. They've gone, hang on, this ship is sinking. What we don't need now is somebody who can sort of lean back and give it the sort of one-handed driving whilst playing some loud music. What you need now is a 10-2 driving instructor to make sure that he safely navigates you the way through. And Gary Rowett is that bloke. Defensively, pragmatic. Yeah, Oxford were not delightful to watch by any stretch, but they weren't getting absolutely pummeled week on week. Okay, the results weren't great, but I don't think Oxford's really a fair measure. He had a good stint at Millwall, some mid-table finishes there. Look, the guy, and I really hope that, picking up on your point about Andy King, I really hope he keeps him right there, because Andy King is clearly, in terms of man management and player motivation, has clearly begun to get something more out of these players. If Rowett can come in, be the experience, he's managed 5 different teams in the Championship. If he can be that experience, and Andy King can be the sort of man on the training ground in terms of cajoling the players, and Rowett sets up the systems, I think it could be a really, really good partnership. And if King stays as somebody senior, like the assistant manager, till the end of the season, and then you say to Rowett, look, if we're talking a new contract, we can talk about you bringing your own people in. But I think what we've said about King is we've had a lot of good stuff to say about his time as the interim manager, but sometimes stood in that technical area, even though Sadler's come in to support him at this stage, he's looked very lonely and kind of not necessarily with the experience naturally, because he's still young, he's not done it for very long, to have the impact in games and in terms of shape. So I think a Rowett King combination, I think, is the best we could hope for, but also is a pretty good fit for where we are at the moment.
There's a few people out there who are not keen. One of them is and isn't, and that's Mickey Keane, who's definitely not keen. So he not a fan. And Mark Perkins, friend of the show, sports fan himself, with shame it's taken this long to notice 10-2. Great example.
Thanks, Perko. Appreciate it.
From Perko's been on the podcast many moons ago. We're going to get Mark Perkins on the podcast. We need more Perko in our life, definitely. I agree. I agree with it. It's very uninspiring. And the problem is I instantly want to look forward. I want to look forward to the summer and go, what's a very, very interesting decision is going to be made in the summer. Now, I'm basing this on Leicester surviving in the Championship, because if they do survive, are we seriously going to go forward with Gary Rowett in charge? But then again, if Gary Rowett doesn't perform miracles, but gets a few wins on the board and maybe even a few clean sheets and pulls Leicester reasonably safely clear of relegation, it turns into not the dogfight that I think we all think it will be. And Leicester are fine, and then we can completely rebuild. Is he that guy to go forward? I just think people like myself need to just rein back, just tighten those reins, because it's all about now. And I'll be talking later in the week again regarding protests, etc. And we don't really need to put our position across regarding the protest and regarding essentially King Power out. But I think at the moment everything is so much about the next game. It's so much about this season. And that's the overall picture of the club. Who owns the club? Who's the director of football? Why are certain people still in charge of the football club? Why are certain people still owning the football club? Why Aren't they selling the football club? I want someone else to be in charge, etc., etc. I just think right now that all, and also with Gary Rowett, that all can maybe be put to one side because it's all about Saturday, because we need points. Now, I know you can have the two arguments and the two conversations at the same time. You can be wanting Leicester to get the 3 points on Saturday, or even maybe just a point and a clean sheet, and eventually pull clear of relegation and not be relegated to League One, whilst in the same breath wanting new ownership. I completely get that. But I think with this news about Gary Rowett and the fact that he's going to be here until the end of the season, does that kind of put things a little bit in perspective that we are dealing in this micro season? And if we do go down, there could be wholesale, and there probably will be wholesale changes at the club all the way through the club. But if we do stay up, then we can all maybe just take a bit of a breath and then go, right, what do we do now? What do we want to do now? And also, more importantly, who do we want to do it with? Manager, ownership, everything.
Yeah, that is my viewpoint as well. And I know you, myself, and Andy Moore, in our directors of For Fox's Sake, have been having a good old WhatsApp debate over the last few days in terms of where do we, as an organisation, stand on the matter. And I know Andy's kind of leaning a little bit the other way compared to the two of us, in the sense that he thinks enough of us is enough, and now he personally is leaning more towards backing the protests. And look, I'm exactly the same as you. I can completely see both sides, and I fully take points from both sides. And I think it is completely an issue of timing now. And at this moment in time, if we all want the best for the football club, in my opinion, we have to get fully behind Gary Rowett. We have to get fully behind the players, even if the cheering, the excitement from the stands is completely fake towards the players, because they've gone so far beyond what you think are Leicester City players. They've gone so far, not beyond it, the other way. They've not gone anywhere near what you think a Leicester player should be. So just fake your support and let them believe for the rest of the season that they're half decent footballers, so that they keep the football club in the Championship. And then we can look at uniting the Unite for Change, Project Reese, whatever you want to call it. It's got so many rebrands or different factions that may or may not be coming together. It has to be the here and now. You're right. And it has to be the massive football cliche, the next game. We just got to look at the next game. How are Leicester City going to get 3 points from the next game? Okay, Top and John Rudkin are bringing in a new manager to try and do that. All right. Andy King will be working with Sadler and the coaching staff about how to get the players to try and do that. But we have got a big part to play in that as fans, and shouting loudly about our disagreement with the way that the club's being run is not going to keep us in the Championship.
I agree. But I think a lot of people out there who have listened to me and you over the many years now, they would know that we're quite pragmatic. We like to kind of take a breath and, again, have a pull on the reins, as I mentioned earlier, and let things breathe, and then come across with our points of view, and rather than be quite reactive. And I think that's the way that For Fox's Sake News is going to be as well. Let's see what happens and cover both sides of the stories, talk to the right people on both sides, and then report it so Leicester fans can have a very unbiased point of view, and just report what's actually going on. But, and I say this, and it might surprise you, I am siding slightly towards one way than another. And I think what I've come to terms with over the last few days really is why Leicester cannot go down. Now, we know, obviously, in finance terms, all sorts of numbers get bandied around, and a lot of people don't really like to talk about finance and talk about what's going on behind the scenes, etc., because they go to a 3:00 kickoff on Saturday and they want to watch the football, and they don't want to they want to talk about finance, they want to talk about how much this, that, and the other. They want to see goals, they want to see attacking play, they want to see players working hard, earning their money, and they want to see entertaining football. And guess what? Sometimes Leicester might win, okay, but they want to go to the King Power and watch that, okay, and maybe even go away from home, maybe even go away in the FA Cup. And at the moment, they're not getting that. And I can completely understand the frustration with the board and with the ownership. Absolutely, completely. And I would normally be the person who would turn around and go, well, I'd rather talk about actually the actual football itself. And football is, and again, the cliche that I've said for many years, it's a huge cycle. And guess what? We're going right down to the bottom and eventually we'll come back up. But the fact that we moved into the relegation zone, I think tipped me over the edge somewhat. It really did. And the old adage of you can actually still support the players on the field whilst having protests, and also not inside the ground, but outside maybe, and also wanting ownership change. Again, something I've said for years and years and years is to try and remove an owner of a football club is an incredibly difficult, and not even difficult. It's not only impossible if that person doesn't want to move. If they're going, right, no, this is my football club. I really want to kick on with it. I want to do better. I want to get the team back into the Premier League and this, that, and the other. Even if some of the statements are laughable and a little bit farcical. I mean, we all thought that with Vishai when he says we want to get us into European competition. That's all very well and good. I get it. I really do. And also, you need a buyer for a football club. And people saying, "Oh yeah, top sell the football club to who? To who? Do we have that person who's on TV or coming on for Fox 8 saying, actually, I want to buy Leicester City Football Club, and the fans are going, well, there you are. Here's the person to sell the club to. Okay, I get that. That's what I would normally say. I really would. My problem with the ownership now with Top is that I think it's just incredibly naive. And when the interviews happened a few weeks ago, I think we were all waiting for John Rudkin to be moved on. And that's not happened. And I think what a lot of Leicester fans have looked at and gone, do you know what? I think if you asked 10,000 Leicester fans, I think the vast majority would have wanted probably Top to continue and King Power to continue. But with Rudkin going, when all those interviews happened and it turns out that Rudkin was just moved upstairs and continues at Leicester, we've had no director of football appointed. We've waited 3 weeks for a manager to be appointed, and then the manager, who turns out is Gary Rowett, could have been appointed a lot earlier. And now the club has found itself in the relegation zone. And I think that's completely tipped things towards the top out group. And I completely get it, because I think a lot of people and football fans, we're not stupid. We understand. And I think a lot of football fans understand that if Leicester go down, they are in a whole world of bother. It's a completely different football club to what it was when we got relegated to League One in the late 2000s. Absolutely, completely different. Okay. And there's been a video going around in recent times regarding the finance of football, etc., which goes into a lot more detail about how Leicester, just as a football club, are an awful lot bigger facilities, obviously a bigger wage bill because they've been recently in the Premier League compared to the late 2000s. And if we do go down, if we don't bounce back straight away, we are in serious trouble. And that trouble is not trouble that we can't spend money. It's not trouble that we have to get rid of our high earners. It's a trouble of going bang. And all of a sudden, if you do go down and Top's not there, we go bang. So there is a 6 of one, half of another kind of argument going on here. It's scary. It is very scary, because we're all used to going down as a football club. We're all used to getting promoted as a Leicester City Football Club. But if we go down, we are in some serious bother. And I think it all, and I just really believe all of it goes back to a Mr. Rudkin. If he went, I still think if we dropped into the relegation zone as we have, a lot of people would still be King Power in rather than out. I think it's just that guy, that name.
Yeah. This is definitely something that's going to be discussed a lot more on future episodes this week. But if I'll fully take your point and bring it back round to Gary Rowett, and it is the case of them realizing that we've got 14 games to save our season. You know, the disappointment of dropping into the relegation zone without even playing a game. And Portsmouth are the team that are in 21st, just looking at the league table, and they're 2 games in hand on us. So the next one's up at West Brom, who are 2 points ahead of us. But if you look at our form, it's just, apart from Sheffield Wednesday, it's the worst down there. And something needs to happen now to arrest that. King's not been able to. And somebody coming in to try a certain style of football wouldn't be style of football in terms of passing play. You know, when you talk about style of football, nobody ever talks about the way that teams defend. You always talk about what the teams do with the ball. And I think Gary Rowett's being brought in because of the way that he considers what happens to his teams when they don't have the ball. And that is ultimately, that's got to be the position we're in, because we've proved this season, although the goals scored aren't absolutely massive, they're bigger than anyone I can see from 16th down. Goals scored is higher at Leicester than any other team in the sort of bottom section. Not that much of a problem with scoring goals, but we're 26 games without a clean sheet now, apart from against Cheltenham. So Gary Rowett surely comes in for that bit, doesn't he? I think it'd be interesting just to pop in the views of a few contributors to the For Fox's Sake podcast, in addition to the comments of people. And if you're just joining us live, do get your comments in. We're with you for a few more minutes yet, I reckon. Ashley Parker saying he's certainly not a glamorous appointment, but it's the predicament that we find ourselves in, that we can't pick and choose. So we need to get behind him and hope he can somehow keep us up like he did with Oxford last year. Very serious point from Ashley, who then characteristically follows it up by saying Top's been ringing Enzo for 4 weeks. He's finally blocked his number, so that's why Rowett's finally got the job. Dave Sherwood saying at least the CV matches the predicament, which is kind of what we've been saying here. He's a guy that's got vast championship experience and recent experience of keeping a team in the division. Rude had zero experience keeping a team up. Yeah, still does have zero experience in that. And Marty had zero experience getting one promoted from the Championship. Remember that a few weeks ago when we were talking about still being in the hunt for the playoffs. And John O'Towers as well saying Gary Rowett is probably as good as we can get for this scenario. Might not be the man for a rebuild, but glamorous is not what we need. We need pragmatic and we need metal. And that is, I think, what we've got with a guy that was like that in his playing career as well, wasn't he? Just solid right back. If we can have a solid right back leading a solid team that stops shipping so many goals and stops making so many individual errors, then you back us to finish comfortably somewhere really in the dizzy heights of like 17th or something, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Plenty more comments coming through. Andy says, understand the go down to League One point of view, but financially, I don't think we can risk it absolutely whatsoever. I think those who say, let's go down, if we go down to League One, it's a chance for a complete refresh, to press a reset button, get rid of everyone. No, for me, it's a hard no. You can rebuild in the Championship. What we do know with Top and the King Power ownership is that they will put all the money in the world forward for players. Too much money as well, and obviously it needs to be reined in with financial fair play, etc. But what we would do, and again, we would aim for promotion. Going down to League One, it's just a huge no. I get the sentiment. I like Andy from For Fox's Sake says. I get it, but it's just a complete no. So whoever comes in, Rowett, it looks like it will be, hopefully can keep us up. That's all we need. That's all we need to do is survive. And then we can then cross the bridge all together, hand in hand. Do we keep Rowett? Do we want the ownership to remain? X, Y, Z, and we can go through the alphabet and get rid of all the players as well. Plenty more as well. We've got Tom says, for me, it's about the academy. The toxic atmosphere in the stadium will ruin our young prospects, who at the age of under 22 could be told they were crapped by 20,000 fans and get better. Yeah, and that's what we were just talking about, the protests, etc. You know, does the protest affect what's actually happening on the field? But then again, if I was part of the protest, I'll say, well, what's happening on the field is absolutely terrible as it is. So would it make any difference? So you can see both sides, can't you? Plenty of well-known Leicester fans and former players making that point of view, saying, you know, we don't need the infighting. I get it. I get it. But then again, those who are saying, let's just get behind the team, like you were saying earlier, Rob, regarding like almost like fake cheers. Let's overly get behind the team. I get it. Something that would happen maybe towards the end of the season, in the last few games. But then there'll be other people going, well, hang on, I've been here every week shouting my head off, and it's been absolutely terrible. But I suppose new manager comes in, maybe a new bounce, not just for the players, but for the fans as well. Hopefully that's the case. We shall see. But then if I was a supporter at the ground, I'll turn around and go, well, we want the players to do something first. We will react to that, obviously. We can't just be overly delighted and cheering everything for the first 10 minutes. All of a sudden, Leicester are 2 down. What are you going to do? You're not going to be smiling, are you? But again, we'll see. We also have James Wade talking about, again, the ownership. Who wants to buy something that's in debt? They have no money. Well, the club's in debt, and again, it's that refinancing that they have been offering shares, etc. It's a maybe a conversation for a different day, but I think it still forms part of the argument with all these protests planned, etc., regarding the ownership. Again, you're wanting the owner to go, but who's going to buy it? So is it better the devil you know? Don't know. We shall see. We shall see. You've got also comments like our players are just not good enough. I would swap our squad with Charlton, Oxford, or Millwall. Well, Millwall are flying high actually. And yeah, it's divisive times at Leicester City, isn't it? Divisive times on the terraces. When it comes to our back line, for a start, they're not even divisive. There's huge gaping holes in the back line. No one's marking anyone. Everyone's completely forgot that attackers might run across them and make near post, far post runs. It's quite ridiculous the way the defence are playing at the moment, and the silly mistakes that even you, Rob, as a semi-competent footballer, I'm going to say, wouldn't make at the back line. It's and then of course when you look at the stands as well and all these protests, etc., that's going on, it's very interesting times at Leicester City, and of course all of the coverage you can find at forfox8.news for that £5 a month. That £5 a month gets you complete access to forfox8.news and all the many articles that are on there. It's been going since the 1st of January, and there's well over 100 articles on there covering everything. Now, Andy Moore's going to be right, has written the majority of those, working full-time for forfox8.news, covering Leicester City, and he will have all the news regarding Gary Rowett, deep dive into Rowett, what he's done at the football club before, what he's done in management, and what it will bring to the football club. And there's plenty more. Just check out forfox8.news. And again, if you do subscribe, it's £5 a month. And what that does, it keeps all of these podcasts absolutely free. These podcasts, these reactionary podcasts with breaking news, we'll have a nice podcast tomorrow regarding the protests and also the defeat to Southampton. We've got also the women's football show. Lily Saunders will be with you around 6 o'clock tomorrow. And then also the preview with you, Rob, talking all things Leicester actually on the field against Stoke, on Thursday or around then. It's a busy old week at the football club, and it's busy for us here on For Fox's Sake. Your final thoughts, Rob, regarding the breaking news that Gary Rowett is going to be appointed, according to John Percy in the Telegraph, but we do take his word not just for granted. We take it as the word of God, basically, when it comes to Leicester news, that he's going to become the Leicester manager. Your final thoughts. Are you heading out to the tattoo parlor to get Rowett tattooed on your backside or on the back of your shirt? What's the feeling? Your final feelings?
Yeah, I'm going to be looking up to remind myself what number he used to wear in his playing days at Leicester City, and I'm going to go and get a retro shirt with his name on the back and show my support. No, I'm not going that far. I'm very much 6 or 7 out of 10 with it, but at this moment in time, I don't think a 9 or a 10 out of 10 manager is going to come in terms of somebody with that kind of profile, with that kind of stature in the game. And I don't think we need one at the moment. And I said this a couple of weeks ago on the show and on our discussion pages on our social media channels as well. You can find us across all forms of social media. I said we don't need a big name at this stage. We don't need a 10 out of 10 manager. We need somebody who's going to be 7 out of 10 themselves and try and drag as many players as possible. Because if all of our players play 7 out of 10, you'd back us to stay in the division. And if we can get them to do that, then it's job done.
Yeah, Leicester knocked out of the FA Cup by Southampton, who've gone from a side that we routinely thrash to routinely lose to now. More reaction on that tomorrow as well. So do make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Head over to forfox8.news. Remember, this will be orderly as well, so you can hear it on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or on SoundCloud. If you are a listener via those medium, then do make sure you give us a 5-star rating, because what that does, it helps give others the chance then to listen to the podcast. It makes it easily available for others to listen to. Also, the women's football show as well. We'll be back tomorrow. Plenty more on forfox8.news, especially when the news that Gary Rowett will be the next Leicester manager gets completely confirmed. Andy Moore will do that deep dive. So make sure you check out forfox8.news. But if not, back with you tomorrow and a fair few times this week, because there's an awful lot going on at Leicester. And of course, for Fox 8, all the best coverage.